The world holds its breath. You can feel it in the air, a tension as thick as smoke from a burning city. Fighter jets streak across the skies of Eastern Europe, their engines a low, constant hum of warning. In the South China Sea, naval destroyers slice through contested waters, their crews on high alert, fingers hovering over triggers. Global alliances, once thought unshakable, are showing deep, worrying cracks. Leaders speak in hushed, urgent tones behind closed doors, their faces grim. The headlines scream of cyber attacks, economic sanctions, and proxy battles fought in faraway lands. It's a drumbeat of instability, growing louder and more insistent each day, a sound we haven't heard with this intensity in generations. It feels like we are standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. The order we took for granted is crumbling before our very eyes. We watch grainy footage on our phones. Tanks rolling through quiet fields, buildings reduced to rubble, families fleeing with only what they can carry. This isn't a movie, it's the stark, brutal reality of 2025. The systems designed to prevent global catastrophe are being tested to their absolute limits. The diplomatic channels are strained, filled with ultimatums and threats. Every move on the global chessboard seems to carry the weight of history, pushing us closer to a confrontation that no one, truly, wants to see. This isn't just about one country against another, it's about a fundamental clash of ideologies, a struggle for power and influence that has drawn in nations from every corner of the globe. The economic fallout is felt everywhere, from the gas pump in Ohio to the grain markets in Africa. Supply chains are snapping, and the cost of living is soaring, a direct consequence of a conflict thousands of miles away. The world is more connected than ever, which means that when one part of it is set ablaze, the heat is felt by everyone. We are all entangled in this web of crisis, whether we realize it or not. And at the heart of this storm, the epicenter of this global earthquake, is the brutal, grinding war in Ukraine. It began as a regional conflict, but it has since mutated into something far more dangerous. It has become the focal point for the world's anxieties, a bloody stage where the future of international law and national sovereignty is being decided. The battle for cities like Kiev and Kharkiv is more than a fight for territory. It's a fight for the very principles that have governed our world for nearly 80 years. The question on everyone's mind is a terrifying one. Is this just the beginning? To understand this war, you have to go back, not just to the invasion in 2022, but further. For centuries, Russia and Ukraine were deeply intertwined, bound by culture, language, and shared painful history. They were once part of the same empire, the same Soviet Union. They called each other brother nations. But beneath the surface of this brotherhood, a deep desire for independence was growing in Ukraine. It was a yearning for its own identity, its own future, its own path. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine declared its sovereignty, a moment of immense national pride, and a decision that would forever alter its relationship with Moscow. The tension simmered for years, a low-grade fever that would occasionally spike, but the turning point came in 2014. A pro-Western revolution in Kiev, known as the Maidan Revolution, ousted a pro-Russian president. Ukrainians flooded the streets demanding closer ties with Europe and a break from Moscow's influence. For the Kremlin, this was a red line crossed. It was seen not as popular uprising, but as a Western-backed coup on its doorstep. The response was swift and decisive. Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula, a strategically vital piece of Ukrainian land, and began backing separatist fighters in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region, igniting a war that would smolder for 8 long years. Those 8 years were a prelude, a long and bloody dress rehearsal for the main event. A frozen conflict raged in the east, claiming over 14,000 lives while the world's attention largely drifted elsewhere. All the while, the battle lines were being drawn not just in trenches but in politics and culture. Ukraine moved further west, amending its constitution to seek membership in NATO, the military alliance created to counter Russia. For Russian President Vladimir Putin, the idea of NATO bases in Ukraine was an existential threat, a dagger pointed at the heart of Russia. He spoke of historical injustice, denying Ukraine's very right to exist as a sovereign state. And then, in the pre-dawn hours of February 24, 2022, the simmering conflict exploded into a full-scale invasion. Russia launched a massive assault from the north, east, and south, expecting a swift victory, a lightning strike that would decapitate the government in Kiev and bring Ukraine back into its orbit. But that's not what happened. The Ukrainian people, from soldiers to ordinary civilians, mounted a fierce and unexpected resistance. The Brotherhood was shattered by the blast of cruise missiles and the roar of tanks. The seeds of resentment, sown over decades, had finally bloomed into a horrifying, full-scale war. You don't need to be a historian to see the chilling parallels, the echoes of a past we swore we would never repeat. Watch the newsreels from the late 1930s. You'll see a powerful nation claiming its neighbor's territory, arguing it is simply reclaiming what is historically its own. You'll hear speeches about protecting ethnic kinsmen in other countries, a justification used to redraw maps by force. It's the same language we hear today. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 feels disturbingly similar to the annexation of the Sudetenland in 1938, a move initially met with a muted international response, emboldening the aggressor to go even further. The images themselves are like ghosts from a history book, brought to life in high definition. Trench warfare, a brutal tactic we associate with World War I, has returned to the fields of Europe. Soldiers dig in, living in mud and fear, under the constant threat of artillery shells and drone strikes. Cities are besieged and relentlessly bombed into submission, their skylines turned into jagged ruins. Look at the images of Mariupol or Bakhmut, and you can't help but see the ghosts of Stalingrad or Dresden. It is the wholesale destruction of civilian life, a strategy of terror designed to break a nation's will to fight. And then there's the human element, the most heartbreaking parallel of all. The endless lines of refugees, millions of them, mostly women and children, forced to flee their homes with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. They crowd into train stations, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion, saying goodbye to husbands, fathers, and sons who are staying behind to fight. It's a scene that played out across Poland and France in 1939 and 1940. It's the same story of families torn apart, of lives upended in an instant by the geopolitical ambitions of powerful men. The scale of human displacement in Ukraine is something Europe has not witnessed since the Second World War. Just as in World War II, this conflict has become a testing ground for new technologies of war while reviving the old horrors. Hypersonic missiles share the sky with crude, jury-rigged drones. Cyber warfare and disinformation campaigns are deployed to cripple infrastructure and sow confusion, the modern equivalent of dropping propaganda leaflets from the sky. But the result is the same: terror, destruction, and the normalization of violence on a scale that was once unthinkable. The world is once again watching a major land war unfold in Europe, a grim spectacle that brings the darkest chapters of the 20th century rushing back into our present. The conflict has accelerated with a terrifying velocity, reshaping our world in real time. What began with tanks crossing a border has evolved into a relentless, high-tech war of attrition. Each day brings fresh horrors. Long-range missile strikes now target cities far from the front lines, turning civilian apartments, shopping centers, and power plants into infernos. The air raid sirens are a constant, nerve-shredding soundtrack to daily life for millions. We see the videos, shot on cell phones, of ordinary people running for cover as explosions rock their neighborhoods. This isn't a distant war anymore. It's an intimate daily terror broadcast to the world. The international response has been a whirlwind of activity, a frantic effort to contain a fire that threatens to spread. Leaders shuttle between capitals for emergency summits. Sanctions, tougher than any ever imposed on a major economy, have been unleashed to cripple Russia's war machine. But the fighting grinds on. Billions of dollars in military aid, from advanced rocket systems to tanks and fighter jets, have poured into Ukraine, turning the conflict into a proxy war between Russia and the West. Around the world, protests erupt, with citizens waving blue and yellow flags in solidarity, demanding their governments do more to stop the bloodshed. The conflict has also redrawn the map of global alliances. Finland and Sweden, nations that clung to neutrality for decades, even through the Cold War, rushed to join NATO, seeking protection under its security umbrella. The alliance itself has been revitalized, deploying thousands of additional troops to its eastern flank, creating a new Iron Curtain that stretches from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Russia has deepened its ties with countries like China and Iran, creating a powerful bloc of nations united by their opposition to the US-led global order. The world is polarizing, dividing into armed camps in a way not seen since the 1940s. We stand at a crossroads, looking down a path shrouded in fog. The rhetoric has grown more dangerous, the threats more explicit. The specter of nuclear weapons, once a relic of the Cold War, has been invoked. a chilling reminder of how quickly this conflict could spiral out of control. The guardrails of the international system are groaning under the strain. The world that existed before February 2022 is gone, replaced by a new era of confrontation and fear. We are left with one final terrifying question. Are we watching the beginning of the end of a regional war, or are we witnessing the first chapter of World War III?